The morning traffic on Wilshire Boulevard crawled beneath a pale California sunrise as Victoria Hayes stepped out of the glass tower that housed the headquarters of Pacific Horizon Technologies. At 34, Victoria had built one of the fastest growing AI companies on the West Coast. Business magazines called her the silent queen of Silicon Beach because she rarely appeared in interviews and almost never posted on social media. Most people in Los Angeles wouldn't recognize her if she walked past them. She preferred it that way. A metallic gray Rolls-Royce Ghost glided to the curb exactly at 7:30 a.m. The driver's door opened. "Good morning, Miss Hayes." Victoria smiled politely. "Morning, Ethan." Ethan Brooks had only worked for her for 4 months. His father, Samuel Brooks, had driven Victoria for nearly 8 years before retiring due to a heart condition. Samuel had been punctual, respectful, and fiercely protective of her privacy. When he retired, he asked only one favor. "My son needs another chance," he'd said quietly. Victoria trusted Samuel enough to say yes. So far, Ethan seemed capable enough. He drove smoothly. He kept the car spotless. He rarely spoke unless spoken to. At least, that's what she believed. 3 weeks later, Victoria stepped outside her Brentwood home carrying a leather portfolio. She paused. Someone was already sitting in the passenger seat. A young blonde woman wearing oversized designer sunglasses was filming herself with her phone. "And this is what it's like dating a successful CEO." The woman laughed toward the camera. Victoria frowned. Ethan hurried around the car. "Sorry, Miss Hayes." He lowered his voice. "This is my girlfriend, Madison." Madison barely glanced toward Victoria before returning to her phone. "Her office is close to yours," Ethan continued nervously. "I figured dropping her off first wouldn't be a problem." Victoria looked at the route on her watch. "Technically, it wasn't." "It's fine," she answered. "Just don't let it interfere with work." "It won't." He sounded relieved. Madison didn't even acknowledge Victoria as she climbed into the back seat. Instead, she continued recording. "Babe," she smiled toward Ethan. "Can we stop for iced coffee?" Ethan laughed. "Of course." The Rolls-Royce pulled away. Victoria quietly opened her laptop. She had 3 board meetings before lunch. Whatever happened in the front seat wasn't worth her attention. Or so she thought. Over the following month, Madison became a permanent passenger. Every morning, every afternoon, always in the front seat, always acting as though she belonged there. Victoria noticed small things first. Madison adjusted the mirrors every day, changed the music, complained if the air conditioning wasn't exactly the temperature she liked. Then the comments started. "You know," Madison said one afternoon while looking at Victoria through the rear-view mirror, "it's funny how some employees get way too comfortable around successful men." Victoria didn't even look up from her tablet. "I'm sorry," Madison smiled sweetly. "Nothing." But her eyes told a different story. Days later, Victoria entered the car carrying a takeaway salad. Madison wrinkled her nose dramatically. "Oh my God!" "What?" Victoria asked. "Do you smell that?" She sprayed expensive perfume into the air. "I swear, every time she gets in the car, the whole place smells like cheap office food." Ethan gave Victoria an apologetic glance. "Madison's sensitive to smells." Victoria simply closed her laptop. "No problem." That evening, she instructed the detailing company to perform a full interior cleaning. The following morning, Madison sprayed disinfectant across the rear seat before Victoria climbed in. Victoria watched silently. Another week passed. Disposable seat covers appeared on the leather seats. Madison laid one down every morning. "For hygiene," she explained. Victoria finally asked Ethan privately, "Does your girlfriend dislike me?" Ethan looked horrified. No, not at all. She's particular about cleanliness. He nodded far too quickly. Exactly. Victoria wasn't convinced, still. She had acquisition deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars to negotiate. Arguing with someone's girlfriend ranked very low on her list of priorities. One Friday morning, Victoria opened the rear door, then froze. A yellow sticky note had been attached to the leather seat. It read, "No freeloaders allowed." She slowly peeled it off. Ethan. His smile disappeared. Yes. Ms. Hayes? Victoria held up the note. What exactly is this? Before Ethan could answer, Madison turned around with an irritated expression. You can read, can't you? Victoria looked at her. Madison crossed her arms. If you can't afford your own Uber, maybe stop mooching rides from my boyfriend every single day. Victoria blinked. Victoria stared at Madison for several long seconds. The morning traffic continued to flow around the Rolls-Royce, but inside the car, everything felt strangely still. I'm sorry, Victoria said calmly. Would you repeat that? Madison rolled her eyes dramatically. You heard me. She leaned back in the passenger seat as though she owned it. Every single morning you expect Ethan to pick you up and drive you to work. She laughed. Honestly, it's embarrassing. Victoria slowly shifted her gaze toward Ethan. He looked as if every drop of blood had drained from his face. Ms. Hayes. His voice barely escaped his throat. I can explain. Please do. He stepped away from the driver's door and lowered his voice. Madison doesn't know I'm a chauffeur. Victoria said nothing. I told her, he swallowed, that I'm an executive at Pacific Horizon. And the Rolls-Royce, I told her it was mine. Victoria continued watching him without expression. I never meant for this to happen. Madison interrupted before he could continue. Ethan, why are you apologizing to her? She pointed at Victoria. She's the one taking advantage of you. Victoria almost laughed. Almost. Instead, she folded the sticky note and slipped it into her purse. So, she asked Ethan quietly, your solution was to lie? He nodded weakly. My father always wanted me to succeed. I didn't want Madison thinking I was just a driver. And rather than tell her the truth, I made a mistake. Madison scoffed. A mistake? She turned toward Victoria again. If you had any self-respect, you'd stop flirting with someone else's boyfriend. Victoria finally smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. I see. Ethan looked relieved. For a brief moment, he thought the situation had passed. Then Victoria stepped away from the car. She reached into her handbag, pulled out her phone, and dialed 3 numbers. Ethan's eyes widened. Ms. Hayes, the operator answered. 911. What's your emergency? Victoria's voice remained perfectly calm. Hello. My vehicle has just been taken without my permission. I'd like to report it stolen. Madison burst into laughter. Oh, please. You're actually calling the police because you got rejected? The operator asked for the vehicle description. Victoria answered each question clearly. Gray Rolls-Royce Ghost. California plate. She read the numbers. The individuals currently attempting to leave in it do not have my authorization. Ethan's hands began shaking. Ms. Hayes, please. I'll explain everything. Victoria ended the call. Then she stepped back onto the sidewalk. You should probably leave. Neither of them moved. Finally, Ethan climbed behind the wheel. We'll just go around the block. I'll come back. Madison smirked. I can't believe this woman. The Rolls-Royce disappeared into traffic. Victoria simply checked her watch. She had already informed her assistant she would be late. Now, she waited. 23 minutes later, two black and white LAPD cruisers pulled to the curb. An officer approached. Ms. Hayes? Yes. You reported a stolen vehicle? I did. Before she could say another word, the familiar Rolls-Royce rounded the corner. It stopped so suddenly the tires squealed. Ethan jumped out before the engine was even off. Officers! This is all a misunderstanding. I'm her driver. He pointed desperately toward Victoria. I work for Ms. Hayes. One officer looked from Ethan to Victoria, then back to the Rolls-Royce. You took the vehicle without authorization? No. I always drive it. Victoria remained silent. The officer asked the obvious question. Ma'am, do you wish to press charges? Ethan's face turned ghost white. He hurried toward Victoria. His voice became almost a whisper. Please. My father, Victoria looked at him. My father worked for you for years. He's recovering from heart surgery. If he finds out I lost this job, he couldn't finish. Victoria remembered Samuel Brooks. 8 years. Never once late, never once dishonest. He had protected her from photographers, waited outside hospitals overnight, driven through wildfires and storms without complaint. Everything Ethan had. He owed to that man's reputation. She closed her eyes for a moment, then looked at the officers. I'm not filing charges. Not today. Ethan nearly collapsed with relief. Thank you. Thank you so much. The officers documented the incident before leaving. As the police cars disappeared, Victoria turned to Ethan. This was your second chance. I hope you understand that. I do. I swear. It will never happen again. Victoria nodded once. Drive. The ride to Pacific Horizon's headquarters passed in complete silence. Madison was nowhere to be seen. For the first time in weeks, the passenger seat was empty. Victory. Madison laughed so hard she nearly spilled her wine. Your house! She looked around the living room before turning back to her friends. Did you hear that? She thinks this is her house. The room filled with laughter. Victoria didn't argue. Instead, she calmly pulled a small leather card holder from her handbag. She placed a silver key card on the kitchen island. Pacific Horizon Technologies. Executive access, owner authorization. Then she pressed a button on her phone. Less than 2 minutes later, the sound of several SUVs echoed through the driveway. The front door opened. 4 security officers entered first, followed by Victoria's attorney and the property manager. Good afternoon, Ms. Hayes, the property manager said. We received your emergency alert. The laughter stopped. Every face in the room turned pale. Madison looked from the security team to Victoria. Ms. Hayes. The attorney placed several documents on the table. The deed to this Malibu residence, the vehicle registration for the Rolls-Royce Ghost, and Pacific Horizon Technologies executive records. She looked directly at Madison. Everything belongs to Ms. Victoria Hayes. Silence. Madison slowly turned toward Ethan, who had just walked through the front door carrying shopping bags. His smile disappeared instantly. Ethan, she whispered. Tell me she's lying. He lowered his head. I can't. I've been her chauffeur. I lied. Madison's knees nearly gave out. You're not the CEO? No. The CEO, he looked toward Victoria, is Ms. Hayes. The room fell completely silent. Victoria stepped forward. I gave you one chance after the police incident because I respected Ethan's father. She looked at Ethan. You wasted it. Then she looked at Madison. You judge someone's worth by what you thought they owned. She paused. You never bothered to learn who they really were. Security politely asked everyone to leave the property. No one argued. As Madison walked past Victoria, tears filled her eyes. "I'm sorry," Victoria answered calmly. "You're sorry because the truth was revealed, not because of what you did." Madison lowered her head and walked away without another word. The following Monday, Ethan was officially dismissed from Pacific Horizon Technologies. Samuel Brooks later visited Victoria to apologize for his son's actions. She reassured him that his own integrity had never been in question. Several months later, Victoria hired a new chauffeur. He arrived 10 minutes early on his first day. He opened the door, greeted her politely, and drove straight to the office. No unnecessary conversations, no passengers, no lies. As the California sunrise reflected off the Pacific Ocean, Victoria smiled slightly. Trust, she realized, wasn't built through words. It was built through choices, made every single day. The end?